The air in the room was warm with anticipation. Rows of soft lights glimmered against the navy backdrop that carried 5 quiet words: the real face of men's health. Before a sound was spoken, everyone present already sensed that the conversation about to unfold would not be just another campaign or celebrity appearance. It would be something deeper, something raw, something that would strip silence of its disguise. Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex, entered not with royal ceremony, but with a steady, human calm. His footsteps were light, but they carried the weight of experience, the kind that can't be learned from protocol or power. As he took his seat beside the other speakers, the applause came not from awe, but from recognition. People were greeting a man who had walked through pain and chosen to turn it into purpose. He began quietly, leaning toward the microphone as though speaking directly to one friend rather than a crowd. "There's a crisis hiding in plain sight," he said. "Men are dying younger, struggling more, and doing it alone." Around him, the panel nodded. They had seen the numbers. In America and across the world, men still die, on average, several years earlier than women. Suicide remains one of the leading causes of death among men under 50. Behind each statistic is a story of isolation, of emotion locked away behind pride and fear. Harry's tone never rose into performance. It stayed even and grounded, like a confession offered on behalf of a generation. "For too long," he continued, "we've been told that silence is strength. But that silence has cost us fathers, brothers, friends. It's time to redefine what being strong really means." The sentence hung in the air. The audience, health experts, veterans, students, community leaders, leaned forward. It wasn't a royal making a speech. It was a soldier, a son, a father reminding the world that vulnerability is not weakness, but humanity. Harry's story has been public property for most of his life. But that night, he spoke with ownership of his own narrative. He recalled the weight of grief after losing his mother at 12, the years he spent suppressing that pain, and the moment in adulthood when he realized that silence was slowly consuming him. "I didn't understand back then," he said, "that grief needs space. When we bottle it up, it changes us. It leaks into anger, into recklessness, into the way we treat others and ourselves. Healing begins the moment we talk." The room was silent, except for the soft clicks of cameras. Many in the audience had tears glistening in the low light. A few nodded, as though his words had reached an old wound. He spoke, too, about the camaraderie of military service, the laughter, the shared hardship, and how leaving that environment made him realize the importance of connection. "In the army, you're never truly alone," he said. "You've always got someone watching your back. But in civilian life, men often lose that bond. We retreat, thinking we must handle everything ourselves." It was this realization that led him to champion mental health initiatives like Heads Together, and now, to align himself with Movember, an organization known for turning moustaches into global conversation starters. Movember's leaders sat beside him, their posture equal parts professional and proud. They spoke about their mission, encouraging men to take action for their physical and mental well-being, funding programs that tackle prostate cancer, testicular cancer, suicide prevention, and psychological resilience. But the Duke's participation took their campaign to a new emotional height. His name carried reach, his honesty carried credibility. Together, they explored how cultural expectations have made men masters of disguise, laughing through pain, drinking through stress, working through heartbreak. One of the panelists, a clinician who had spent decades counseling men, remarked, "When someone like Harry tells his story, it gives permission for millions of others to tell theirs." Harry nodded. "We can't fix what we don't face," he said simply. "And we can't face it if we keep pretending we're fine." Within hours, clips from the event began circulating online. But the headlines weren't about royal fashion or gossip. They were about change. The phrase "real face of men's health" trended across social media platforms. A veteran in Texas tweeted, Hearing Prince Harry talk about trauma felt like hearing my own thoughts out loud. Maybe it's time I call my therapist back. In Nairobi, a young father wrote, "If a prince can cry and still be strong, maybe I can too." From London to Sydney to Toronto, the conversation grew. Men who had stayed silent for years began writing to Movember. Some donated, others simply shared stories, small, brave declarations of vulnerability. The ripple was real. For Harry, this movement was never about image. The same courage that led him to step away from royal life now guided him to step into social activism without pretense. He described how therapy changed his life, how mindfulness and open dialogue helped him become a better husband and father. "Every man I know has a moment where he breaks quietly," he said. "The question is, will we be there for each other when that moment comes?" His sincerity disarmed even the most cynical listeners. No teleprompter, no rehearsed smiles, just truth delivered from someone who had seen what silence can do. Major news outlets covered the event. The New York Times called it a watershed moment in modern masculinity. The Guardian wrote, "Prince Harry speaks the language of emotional literacy that men have long been denied." Movember's donations spiked in the following week, and counselling helplines reported a noticeable rise in calls from men citing the event. Universities planned men's wellness weeks, using Harry's quotes as themes. Corporate offices discussed revising health programs to include mental health leave. In many places, the old joke about growing a moustache for Movember shifted towards serious dialogue about why it matters. In one poignant moment during the discussion, Harry paused after listening to another panelist describe losing a close friend to suicide. The Duke's voice dropped to a whisper. "I think of all the times I smiled when I wasn't okay," he said. "If someone had just asked me twice, really asked, I might have opened up sooner. We have to keep asking each other twice." The audience murmured in agreement. The phrase "ask twice" soon became another online slogan, reminding people that genuine concern often takes more than one question. He also addressed the challenges men face when they seek help and are met with ridicule. "We have to dismantle that culture," he urged. "Therapy isn't weakness, it's maintenance. You service your car, you should service your mind." After the panel, Harry mingled with attendees. He shook hands with veterans, hugged fathers, listened to college students who had lost friends. Each interaction was met with patience and warmth. He wasn't there to be admired, he was there to connect. One attendee later said, "It felt like talking to someone who truly gets it. He didn't give advice, he gave time." By midnight, the event hall had emptied, but the sense of unity lingered. Journalists who had arrived to cover a royal appearance left writing about compassion, about the shifting definition of manhood in the 21st century. In the weeks that followed, governments, health agencies, and non-profits cited the event as a case study in using celebrity influence for authentic social change. In Canada, policymakers discussed expanding mental health funding for men. In Australia, Movember teams launched new educational materials featuring excerpts from Harry's talk. Even in the United Kingdom, where media scrutiny of the Duke often turns harsh, commentators conceded that his advocacy was making measurable difference. Editorials debated whether modern royalty should look more like this: raw, relatable, and relentlessly human. Cultural critics began to call this moment the Harry effect. Just as Princess Diana's honesty about AIDS patients reshaped compassion in the 1980s, her son's openness was reshaping the global conversation on men's mental health. Men who once mocked therapy began attending support groups. Schools introduced emotional literacy programs for boys. Sports teams started dedicating matches to mental health awareness. In interviews that followed, Movember leaders described Harry's contribution as a spark that reignited an overdue fire. At the core of Harry's message was a redefinition of masculinity itself. He said, "We've been taught that strength is the absence of emotion. I think strength is the mastery of emotion, the ability to feel and still move forward." That line echoed in articles, posters, and classrooms around the world. It summarized the shift that modern men needed: not to abandon toughness, but to pair it with tenderness. Friends close to the Duke shared that his commitment goes beyond public appearances. At home, he practices what he preaches, balancing family life with therapy, meditation, and volunteering. He continues to support veterans programs through the Invictus Games Foundation, linking mental recovery with community service. His wife, Megan, has often spoken about her admiration for his openness, calling it the courage that saves lives in silence. Together, they've made mental health a family mission rather than a public obligation. Perhaps the most touching image from that evening came not from the stage, but from after the cameras switched off. A young man approached Harry, trembling, and admitted that he had been planning to end his life before seeing the event announcement online. "I thought if I came here, maybe I'd find a reason not to," he said. Harry hugged him tightly and whispered, "You've already found it, because you're still here." That moment never made the headlines, but it captured everything the campaign stood for. Months later, Movember released data showing record engagement. Thousands of new volunteers signed up. Funded projects expanded across continents. The organization credited the Duke's appearance for humanizing statistics into stories. Psychologists noted a subtle shift in male patients, more willingness to express emotion, less shame around seeking help. They called it a cultural unfreezing. And though the media moved on to other stories, the echo of that evening remained. In a closing statement shared through the Archewell Foundation, Prince Harry summarized what he hoped people would carry forward. "We can't undo loss, but we can prevent future ones. Every time a man opens up, he keeps another man alive. That's the legacy we should all be building." Looking back, that Movember event will be remembered as more than a discussion. It was a global turning point, a reminder that empathy can be revolutionary, that healing begins with honesty, and that even those born into privilege must use their voices for those who cannot. Prince Harry didn't stand on that stage as royalty. He stood as proof that transformation is possible, that pain can become purpose, and that one man's openness can save countless others. The banner behind him read, "The real face of men's health." That night, the world saw that face clearly, not polished or perfect, but human, brave enough to speak, strong enough to feel, and compassionate enough to lead. And in that honesty, millions of men found a reflection of themselves, and perhaps the beginning of healing that had been waiting far too long.
And that wraps our daily diaries updates. Harry and Meghan always keep the world talking. And if you enjoy this update, do not forget to like, share, subscribe, and for more royalty subbed with honesty, just right here on Daily Diaries Friday. Till next time, stay kind, stay curious, and keep shining. See you next time with more royal news and good vibe. Bye bye.